2008, what became very obvious in the conversations in the convention was that we weren't talking about people we did not know. That when we talk about the immigrant, people who have migrated to our country, we're talking about people who are Episcopalians. We're talking about people who are Methodists and Baptists. We're talking about people who come to this country to work and who worship God. There are always a few people who are criminals, and of course that's always. But the vast, overwhelming majority of people who are immigrants come here to work and earn money to support their families.
Absolutely. I think, much of the immigration debate, it just hinges on this question, whether immigrants are criminals to be feared on the one hand, or neighbors to be welcomed. And again, I think our faith calls us to see people as neighbors, as brothers and sisters. And if you look demographically, in fact, most immigrants coming to the United States happen to be Christian. And so what does that call us towards as Christians, as people of faith?
Well, what are some resources that are available to folk who want to learn more about it? Because one of our resolutions does encourage people to learn and to be educated. So what are some of the resources?
And the learning and the education piece is really key, because there's so much flying around out there in the debates. We really, we need people to know the facts on the ground and to have a reasoned and a thoughtful conversation about these issues. It's very complicated stuff. The policy's complicated. And so we, at the Council, we've provided several important resources, I think, for looking at these issues. One, I've got them right here. One is this study guide. It's called For You or Want a Stranger, and it deals with immigration in the U.S. through the lens of faith. It's a full length, it's 8 weeks study guide, very readable. There's reflection questions in there, worship resources, and lots of additional stuff tied in. It's available for free if you just go to the website, and I'll send you a box if you want, so that your church, your congregation can engage in that kind of conversation.
So this is a Christian education piece that can be used for adults and maybe adapted for younger teenagers.
Yeah.
And people can just go to your website and order it through there?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Fill out the form, we'll drop it in the mail. We also have fact sheets here. This one is called Faith and Immigration, and it covers some of the ground that we've talked about, but it looks at our calling as people of faith and some particular biblical texts, and tries to shed light on immigration issues through the lens of faith. And we have another companion piece called Society and Immigration. This one, again, it examines some of the myths and the misinformation that's out there, and just tries to set the record straight in a very readable, easy to digest kind of format.
How can people get involved?
There are lots of important ways to get involved. And I think, the policy, the debate at the national level, it's important. As people of faith, we need to be calling our congresspeople, letting them know what we believe in. They need to hear that message. That's very, very important. But there are also things at the very local, at the very local level that will, I think, help us to engage in this kind of conversation. And it can be simple things like hosting a community meal and inviting immigrant communities within the church's neighborhood to come and participate. Nothing brings people together like sharing a meal, right?
It works.
It does work. But having that kind of face-to-face interaction, when we're debating numbers and figures, it's all abstract. What we need is to get to know our neighbors, including those who are immigrants, and we'll find that changes the conversation entirely. And so there are lots of local ways that people can get involved. I also would encourage folks to sign up for email updates so that you can hear about what's happening and respond that way. And also to sign up for the North Carolina Religious Coalition for Justice for Immigrants and sign on to that statement. Again, it's important.
And can laity sign on to that as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I'm a signatory as a bishop, and I know a number of our clergy are, so people can go to your website and sign up to support
lay people can sign on as well. Yes, absolutely.
What might comprehensive immigration reform look like?
I think your document spells it out very nicely. to talk about Arizona for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about what it shouldn't look like, right?
Good.
Arizona's measure increases the kind of enforcement that is just not helpful to the situation. It doesn't address the root causes, and it doesn't address really why people are here. Instead, it's build a bigger fence, and if you have any kind of reasonable suspicion that someone is undocumented, you check their status then and there, and possibly deport them. That's not a very helpful approach. Again, because it doesn't address really the reasons why people are moving, why people are coming. People are migrating for reasons of work and family, and until we talk about those things, we don't really have a solution. So comprehensive immigration reform needs to address those areas. It needs to provide a legal pathway for people who are here undocumented so that we can have people on a level playing field. In terms of the economics of all this, right now our broken system, it rewards employers who are unscrupulous, who don't have morals, who break the law, employers who go out and hire people who are undocumented. The employer benefits because they can pay less in wages, they don't have to provide things like workers' comp, and so what we need to do is put workers on a level playing field. And comprehensive immigration reform, that would be one of the pieces.
You've written about the situation in Zebulon, and why don't you say a little bit about that situation and sort of where that is now? And everyone may not know about it. You may have to say a little bit more.
Sure, I'd be happy to. We read some reports and some newspaper articles that talked about allegations that in Zebulon, local law enforcement were targeting a Latino congregation, setting up checkpoints during church services, coming onto church property, those kinds of things, in order to round up people that were undocumented. And at the North Carolina Council of Churches, we just find those kinds of tactics to be absolutely just wrong, just flat out wrong. That we believe the rule of law is important.
Right.
But as a society, we get to choose how we want to enforce our laws and what we consider to be appropriate. And for a country that values its religious freedom, to think of having to present ID to get into church is just pretty repugnant, and something that I think it creates a lot of problems, creates a lot of fear in the immigrant communities. And it also, I think, undermines public safety in a way, because what we've seen, I hear this all the time, is that immigrant communities in North Carolina, as a result of this kind of enforcement that seems to know no kind of limits, that kind of enforcement, it undermines trust between immigrants and local law enforcement. And if there's not trust, then who's going to call the police when they witness a crime? People are afraid to call, even as Vic at the North Carolina Council of Churches, we're opposed to these particular tactics for enforcing immigration law. Again, we think the law is important, but we think that the federal government should be the ones employing it, and that local police, local sheriff's departments need to be watching out for the safety of everyone in their communities rather than targeting a certain population.
It's probably fair to say that the reality is the Arizona legislature acted because the federal government failed to do its responsibility.
I think that's fair to say. And it's a reflection of, there's a lot of frustration on all sides of the debate. There's a lot of frustration with where we are right now. I think Arizona and even these local incidents just spur us on towards wanting to push for comprehensive reform.
Chris, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother.
All right.
More information on this is included with this edition of Please Note. Jesus said in the 25th chapter of Matthew, on Judgment Day, to the righteous who said, Lord, when did we see you hungry, or when did we see you naked or a stranger? And Jesus said, whenever you did it to the least of these who are members of my family, you have done it unto me. Chris, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
God bless you, and keep the faith.